Welcome to 3 Point Landing, where we talk about movies, games, and TV shows. Brought to you by Big Baby Studios. I'm Misha.
I'm Matthew.
And today we are going to continue on something we talked about last week. We discussed how it's weird that we don't see anything new from the MCU, or at least we haven't, because of the ongoing pandemic. Building on that, I guess it's fun to point out that an area that the MCU was not dominant in for the longest time, or Marvel in general, was things like animation and video games. What can you say about that?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought the MCU as a context for my favorite thing, the video games, because but it was weird about the whole duration of that era of Marvel movies is that there weren't many big video games to accompany it. You remember the good old days of like the PlayStation 2 and Xbox, where every time a big movie came out, there was always a mediocre video game to go with it. You know, like a Batman Begins and a mediocre video game, a Superman Returns and a mediocre video game. Like that barely happened with the Marvel Universe. You know, I think there was just 2 games for that. It was like the Captain America video game and an Iron Man video game and a Thor video game. They did a Thor video game.
Right. I remember trying out the Captain America and the Iron Man video games on the Xbox and Xbox 360. Sorry. And they were just painful. They were the kind of things that you would download for free on your mobile now. They were really bad. They were really bad. But all of that changed. I mean, on the DC side, you know, because they had the whole Arkham Asylum series, it just seemed for the longest time that Marvel would not be able to catch up. And all of that changed, thank goodness, in 2018 with Spider-Man. That was just, wow. That just changed everything.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the success of the great Spider-Man game that we're talking about, the success of that is that it's not exactly unprecedented before. Marvel is capable of, finding partners in the wild world of video games to make great video games. So, as an incredible, phenomenal like experience that the Spider-Man game is, it's not like came from nowhere.
Fair enough, but I just wanted to point it out because it says a lot about the quality of that game, that its follow-up, whether it's a actual sequel or a glorified DLC, I mean, the jury's still out on that. The next entry is going to be a launch title for the PS5. And I think that is a big deal.
Yeah. You're talking about Spider-Man Miles Morales, right?
Right. Don't get me wrong. Don't misunderstand. I am genuinely excited for that. I'm just a little iffy because of some of the conflicting statements that they've made about whether or not it's a full standalone title, whether it's an add-on to the eventual remaster that's coming out. What do you think?
Thankfully, you have me here to talk about the video games and clarify these things for you. Now, okay. Spider-Man Miles Morales is a standalone story that is a $40 experience, meaning it's going to cost less. It's going to be smaller than a full-bodied Spider-Man experience.
Still sounds like a DLC to me.
The closest video game analogy to that would be a game like Uncharted Lost Legacy or Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry, in which the game wasn't necessarily like just mere DLC because it has all the features and all the, resources and assets of the games that preceded it, but they didn't feel like they were fully developed enough to justify, like there isn't enough new technology and new stuff in it to justify charging people $60. And they couldn't really sell it as DLC either, because can you imagine you're like going to get the DLC to Uncharted 4 and they tell you, all right, we're going to make Lost Legacy a DLC. Be prepared to download 50 gigabytes.
Right. I got it.
Yeah. So they got to sell that thing on disc. But anyway, yeah. So getting back on topic, Miles Morales, it's going to be that kind of thing. And I think the reason why they're pushing this as a standalone DLC thing is so that they can, well, first brand to separate the inevitable Spider-Man 2 from this, but also sort of like showcase what's going to happen on the PlayStation 5 without having to go through that laborious production cycle that would make them release this game way past the PlayStation 5's launch date.
That's true. That's true. But I think that, I mean, yes, that's valid, but it also feels like they're just pushing this Miles Morales thing because they didn't have a full blown sequel to show yet.
Absolutely. I mean, you say, okay, I know you're saying that as a criticism, but I take that to be a wise decision because I'd rather, if Sony and Insomniac Games really want to put new product out there, it would do us all a disservice if they were to make compromises just to make a Spider-Man to meet the 2020 release
I agree
day.
with you, but I think that's exactly the reason that it shouldn't be a launch title. Because I think it's kind of a bait and switch, People are going to go into it because they remember the original, the first one. But what they're actually getting is essentially, a stopgap.
Yeah. That's fair.
But on the other hand, this is leaps and bounds above the Marvel video games of yesteryear. So I think at this point, I'll take what I can get. I was just gonna say, like, do you remember what your first Marvel video game was?
If we're gonna go with first, oh my God, we're gonna go travel back in time to the 1980s, and we're gonna talk about the game Captain America and Spider-Man in Doctor Doom's Revenge for the Atari, Amiga, Commodore 64, and IBM PC.
What the actual hell?
Spider-Man and Captain America team up and they engage in side-scrolling battles against various villains, including my favorite, Batroc the Leaper, Eduardo Lobo, the Grey Gargoyle.
What the? Oh man, I knew you were old. I didn't know you were ancient. No, okay. And, absolute truth. Okay, I have never even handled an Atari in my life.
I just have to tell you, when you ask me, you should know already by now. And when you ask me any question that says your first blah blah blah, you are entering dangerous territory. You are entering prehistoric territory.
Okay. Fair enough. Damn. Okay, my first Marvel game was also a Spider-Man title, funnily enough. It was Spider-Man 3 Invasion of the Spider Slayers on the Game Boy.
Ooh, oh yeah. It's serious business because there's a number there, right? Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, I know, right?
That means there are two others that came before.
Spider-Man 3 Invasion of the Spider Slayers was not the best game. Okay? But the fact that it had like Bagley art on the front, that on the cover art, it had Mark Bagley artwork, who would eventually go on to do Ultimate Spider-Man. I think that just made it all seem so much bigger than it actually was, as it was the case back in those days. Back in those days, the cover art would be enough to sell the title, even if the title itself was garbage.
Yeah.
And what I remember most about this one was this game was the epitome of that trope that I mentioned to you before, where as long as you beat the boss, as long as the boss is dead before you fall off the roof and die, you win the game anyway. Because of the way they were programmed back in the days, as long as the boss dies a split second before you do, you're good.
As long as the game recognizes that the boss died and then says, "You win," right before it dawns on its little AI brain, wait a minute. And the credits start rolling.
Whatever passed for AI back then, but yeah. It's just hilarious. That was like it wasn't even my Game Boy, okay? It was my brother's Game Boy, and that was one of the titles that he chose when he got the thing, because it was given to him as a gift, the Game Boy and the games, and I think that was like one of two cartridges that he picked up. So we put an inordinate number of hours into that.
Mm-mm.
After that, the one that stands out for me was X-Men on the Mega Drive, on the Genesis, the Sega Genesis. And
Which one is that one?
That's the one where you can do 2-player co-op. except that the mutant powers, as they were back in the day, were extremely limited. Like leaving Wolverine's claws out drains his health, that kind of thing. Drains his mutant health bar.
That makes absolutely no sense.
No, it doesn't. And the crazy thing is, we could never finish it because we didn't have, my brother and I, we did not have a Sega Mega Drive or a Genesis in the traditional sense. We had this limited edition console that was made for Japan Airlines, the Sega Mega Jet.
What? Wow, this is amazing. So there is a console that's designed exclusively for a fucking airplane?
Yes, it was. It looked like, okay, you know what a Sega Nomad looked like, or a Game Gear, right?
I don't, but I'm learning many new things today.
You don't know what a Game Gear looks like? I'm not, who are you even? But, okay, it looked like,
I was a PC kid. Remember this? I was a PC kid. Fine. Going me late.
Okay, you know how a Game Boy... Okay, the only analogy I can think of for the Sega handhelds were... You know how a Game Boy is essentially portrait? Okay, Sega console handhelds were landscape.
Yeah, 16 by 9 or whatever it was.
No, I mean like the handheld. It was like you held it lengthwise. That's what it looked like compared to the Game Boy. The Game Boy was a vertical thing that you held. And the Mega Jet was essentially... It was not a portable, but it looked like a handheld without a screen. Because it was designed for people to play on Japan Airlines on those little screens on the chair in front of you. Okay, and I don't know where my parents were able to find one, but these things go for like $400 now on eBay. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Okay, so the reason that we couldn't finish X-Men, okay, here's the thing. There was regional copy protection back then. So even if you had the cartridge, let's say from the States, but the console is Japanese, you still needed a special physical adapter that you plugged like Sonic and Knuckles. You had to plug the cartridge into the adapter, and then you plug that whole monstrosity into your console. So it's jutting out of the side of my Mega Jet, right? It's ridiculous. And the worst thing is, the only way to beat Mojo in Mojo's world in the X-Men game was you have to reset the console at some point.
Huh?
You have to reset.
Is this one of those weird Hideo Kojima tricks?
Yes, it was. It was exactly that. No, wait. No, okay. We could beat Mojo. It was Magneto, I think, that we couldn't beat. It was something like that because you had to do exactly the Hideo Kojima thing. You had to unplug the controllers. But in this case, since I had that Japan Airlines thing, the console was the controller. I had nothing to unplug.
Oh my God. No.
So we could never finish that freaking X-Men game.
We should get you an emulator so you can play that game all over again. Stream that shit.
No, I've tried before. That game runs purely on nostalgia. And you try it now, you'd be like, what the hell was I thinking? It wasn't because of the aesthetic. It wasn't because of the look of it, because it looks straight out of early 90s Jim Lee X-Men. But the platforming was awful. The hit detection was wonky. The sound effects were, they were more suggestions than anything else. I mean, the X-Men, the Konami X-Men games on the SNES were just infinitely better. But I didn't have one back then.
All right, let's talk about some more positive experiences now.
Okay, fine.
What I want to talk about is did you ever play Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction?
No, but that sounds incredible.
It is.
No pun intended. But that sounds exactly what I would be looking for in a Hulk game.
Oh man, you got to pick this up. It's available, I think, for PS2 or Xbox Xbox regular. So even though it's not easy to find those consoles these days, it's at the very least you got to stand a better chance of emulating it somehow, or maybe activating it through some kind of weird backwards compatibility program. But anyway, Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. Yeah, that was a game where the premise was the plot premise was that Bruce Banner would put on a device that would allow him to voluntarily transform into the Hulk, but also still retain his mental faculties. And goofy premise aside, the whole game was famous for just having tons of destructive possibilities. It was the ultimate Hulk power fantasy because previous Hulk games, what they would do is they would make it so that you were Hulk very rarely, and you were very often weak Bruce Banner. And it's like, well, I didn't come here to like sneak around laboratories and only once in a while maybe possibly get to be the Hulk. I came here to be the Hulk.
Nobody buys a Hulk game to be Bruce Banner.
Exactly. Otherwise, it would be called Bruce Banner. That would be the logo. You know what I mean? But
that's like making a Batman game where you spend half the game in board meetings as Bruce Wayne.
Well, you spend half the time as Bruce Wayne in the very, very excellent Batman Telltale series for the point and click sort of like narrative adventure game. But that's neither here nor there. Check it out though. I have it on Switch. I like that. I actually do. I like that game.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool, right?
Wait, but tell me more about Bruce Banner, the Bruce Banner simulator.
Well, the Hulk simulator. So as Hulk, you were in an open world sandbox most of the time. So you could go around the city and tear out lampposts and use them to play golf with the soldiers who were hunting you. There's this one mini game where a helicopter is hovering above a building. And you as Hulk just watch the soldiers like jump down, and then you whack them with the lamppost and see how far you can knock them.
This actually sounds like fun, and I don't know how I haven't played this. I just Googled it. Apparently, it was on PlayStation 2.
Yeah, and you can get cars and wrap them around your fists and turn them into power gloves and stuff like that. Or you can rip a car door and put it in the ground and surf.
How did I never play this game? This is ridiculous.
It's incredible. I need a sequel to this game right away.
What the actual hell? The only Hulk game that I can remember playing was The Incredible Hulk, also on the Sega Genesis, where the only good thing about it was the transformation from Banner into Hulk.
I'm sensing a trend here where in the Sega Genesis is home for a lot of Marvel games. I mean, I know there's some good Spider-Man games on that one.
Oh, but, right. That's where my brother and I, we played our first Spider-Man game. I mean, I think it was the first Spider-Man game for Sega Genesis.
I believe that's the one with the good wall crawling, right?
It's had decent wall crawling, and you also had a photography feature where you could make money if you were able to get pictures of Spider-Man with his enemies. So, you would get a score at the end of the stage if you were able to get a good shot. Usually we would try and get the picture like right before engaging them in a fight, because once the fight started, there would be no time to take pictures.
3-point landing.
Oh man, old school. You know what I wish that I could have finished that I never did was the X-Men arcade game.
Oh,
that was beautiful. For everybody who doesn't know, the X-Men arcade game allowed you, and I'm not kidding, you and 4 friends, if your arcade was willing to splurge for the machine.
There's a 2-player cabinet and a 4-player cabinet version of this, right?
No, there's a 6-player version too.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
Whoa.
Yes, sorry. You and 5 friends.
Or strangers.
Or strangers would play as any of the Claremont Byrne era X-Men. So Cyclops had his skull cap. Wolverine was in brown, I think. This is from the 80s. But the game came out, I think, in the early 90s or
1992.
It was based on the art designs for Pride of the X-Men, the failed pilot for the X-Men animated series. It was a failed pilot for what became the X-Men animated series. Wolverine had this god-awful Australian accent. Cyclops was voiced by the guy who played Duke on G.I. Joe. It was just very, very cheesy, that pilot. And they revamped the entire thing when it came time to make the actual show. And but Konami had already made an arcade game based on it because they thought it was going to be a big hit. So
yeah, I remember that's the game that has Magneto saying "Welcome to die." Am I right?
Yes.
Welcome to die.
And you start the game with Professor X telling you to X-Men save the city. That was great. It was a side-scrolling beat 'em up.
X-Men saved the city because you're like fucking Ninja Turtles or something.
But yeah, that was fun. That was a side-scrolling beat 'em up where you could use all the X-Men powers, and then you'd have super moves, ultimate desperation moves. I mean, and that could just take out everybody on the map. And it had Wolverine, it had Cyclops, it had Colossus, it had Storm. I think it had Nightcrawler. It had Dazzler for some reason. Was it, or yeah, that was incredible, because if you guys could imagine, if your arcade was willing to spend for the 4-player or the 6-player version, the arcade cabinet, the machine had 2 screens side by side, and they were synced like you do with your monitors now. Like what programmers have at their workstations. There were 2 screens and they were synced, so you could, the action was like a widescreen experience, and it would often be the loudest thing in the arcade, and the lines are ridiculous. But yeah, that was great. And I never finished it because I never had enough money to finish it, and I never went to the arcade often enough.
Oh my God.
But I remember 10 years ago, I had the app on my iPad. I had the app, and then it expired. They stopped supporting it for some reason.
Oh, so they made an app version of this version?
They did.
They ported it to iOS or something. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they did. And I think it was also on the PlayStation Network.
Wow.
But they took it down. I don't know why they would take it down, because there are people who are still looking for it now. I don't know.
Well, historically speaking, Marvel games tend to not be like, they're not worth the licenses they're printed on, so to speak. What I'm saying is that they tend to get taken down very often when the people who made the games or published the games lose the rights to the characters. This is something that happens a lot to Activision. Like, Activision published many Spider-Man games, like Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, Spider-Man Web of Shadows, and Spider-Man at the Edge of Time. And those games aren't no longer available on the digital platforms that they were released on, because Activision doesn't have the rights to sell them.
Oh man, now that you mention it, I adored the first Spider-Man game on PS1. I think we just turned this entire episode into Spider-Man games, the episode. I know. I mean, we started out by saying there weren't very many memorable Marvel games, but now we just seem to be churning them out. But
20 years, right?
Spider-Man 1 and 2 on the PS1 were brilliant, and they
I don't know about number 2. I don't know about number 2 and Spider-Man 2 : Enter Electro.
No, the first one was better, where you were fighting Dr. Octopus.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers for a 20-year-old video game, but Dr. Octopus merges with the symbiote, and that's fucking wild.
It really is. It was also traumatizing if you were fighting him in a boss battle. But yes, I remember that was the first game where I actually felt like Spider-Man, because you could swing around the city. It wasn't entirely open world, and half the time...
It was open roof. I call it open roof gameplay, because you couldn't go down to the ground. If you managed to fall or swing beneath a certain level, it was insta-death, because the game they couldn't afford to render the streets below.
That's true. In fact, you couldn't even see the streets below half the time, because
there's a fog.
Mysterio had covered the city in a mysterious fog. But the cool thing about it was, you would have Stan Lee narrating the game, telling you about the mysterious fog.
Mm-hmm.
And it just added to its charm. Man, that was a fun game. Yeah, Enter Electro was kind of disappointing, but I think they kicked it up a notch again when they came out with the adaptation of the first Spider-Man movie, the Tobey Maguire, Sam Raimi one.
Yeah, the first one was not so hot, but the second one...
The second one, right?
Yeah, it's when it's considered legendary.
I played that on PC, and it just blew my mind. Now, that one, you had the city streets. You had the open world. It wasn't it had... Some people still say it had the best web swinging up until the PS4 Spider-Man.
Yeah. Now, I want to ask you a question, and I think we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you a question. Which Marvel game was, objectively speaking, bad, but you had to finish it anyway?
Objectively bad, but I had to finish it
or at
anyway.
least you played it way more than it deserved.
Oh, geez. I don't know. Because I enjoyed Deadpool, even if it got repetitive, just because it was funny.
I'll tell you about mine, and you will see this a mile coming. You will see this so like a mile coming.
Are you gonna say the Avengers arcade game port?
No.
On the NES?
The video game based on the Fantastic Four movie.
I hate you so much. Why are we on that again? We were never supposed to talk about the Fantastic Four movie again.
Well, at least it's a video game based on the Fantastic Four movie that starred Ioan Griffith and Jessica Alba and Michael Chiklis and Chris Evans.
And Chris
because
Evans.
Because if there was a video game that was based on the one that starred Miles Teller, I would hurl that into the sun.
Okay, tell me, why did you give this game so much attention?
Because I was 21 and I was dumb.
I don't care what age you were. I'm pretty sure you would have played it anyway. Honestly,
I would. I was really all for collecting all the orbs around the various levels, so that I could unlock the behind the scenes movie extras that came with the game.
Right.
that let you watch video interviews exclusively recorded for the video game.
Ooh,
I know, right? Look, my shtick is that I'm just so pathetically desperate for any kind of representation of the Fantastic Four as a legitimate, not A-class brand, but at least within the B-class tier of all the other, of the Spider-Mans, the X-Mens, and what have you.
I have a question,
I would
though.
take anything.
Did it have their voices?
Oh, yes, it did. In fact, I was going to make a wisecrack about that, about how the only thing that Marvel had going for itself during the MCU era of Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor video games is that the actors were contractually obligated to provide their voices. So, man,
What?
it is so right? Isn't it so depressing when you play that Captain America video game and there's Chris Evans being like, "Here I am."
I did not know they were contractually obligated. I thought they picked up a nice big fat paycheck for taking part because there was no other justification for it.
I think it comes bundled with the paycheck.
I guess. Oh,
Yeah,
my goodness. Ooh, you know what I love, absolutely adore, that's underrated or underplayed these days? Wolverine.
What is that?
The only good thing to come out of that Wolverine Origins movie was the video game based on it.
I hear that one is quite the legend.
No, I'm not being sarcastic. It really is good because it's got Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, which I know is enough to turn a lot of people off. It turns off a lot of purists when I say that, but they absolutely have to give this game a try. The Wolverine Origins video game.
It has battle damage.
But it's based on a shit movie. But yes, it had battle damage. The more Wolverine gets beat up, you can see the blood, the muscles, the bone tissue, knitting itself back together. It was the most brutal. It's the only game where I actually felt like I was Wolverine because unlike that god-awful Wolverine Origins movie, this one was rated a hard R. It was as violent, as bloody as you would imagine and wish a Wolverine game to be. It had Hugh Jackman voicing it, and it was actually set in a movie version of Days of Future Past. But the entire game takes place as a flashback. And it is the most brutal, bloody thing you've ever seen with the Marvel name attached to it. The kind of thing that would never come out now. And the kind of movie they would never have made 10 years ago.
This is one of those games that I hear a lot about, and I really, really desperately want to play it whenever if ever the opportunity arises. So I don't know, and I don't have any personal experience with this game, but I know it's quite legendary for all the things that you mentioned. I do recall though that it's not Hugh Jackman who did the voice, but it was
it's not?
Steve. It was Steve Blum who does a lot of Wolverine voices. But they did get the likenesses for, I believe, Liev Schreiber and Hugh Jackman. They scanned their faces in for that one.
No kidding. What? No, but it's got to be Hugh Jackman who voiced him.
I'm gonna double check for you. I'm gonna double check just in case I'm absolutely full of shit here. Let's see. I am gonna type X-Men Origins Wolverine under Moby Games.
Yeah, this was on Xbox 360 and the PS3.
PlayStation.
I think there was a bad version on PS2. It was really lame, but the Xbox 360 was just the absolute bloodiest thing you've ever seen. If you have a chance to try this out, I heartily recommend it.
Yeah.
What can you say about the upcoming Avengers game? I mean, this looks to be, aside from Spider-Man from 2018, this looks to be the first AAA title we're going to get in the MCU. Okay, not the MCU, but it looks very similar.
Before I continue, I want to let you know that I have egg on my face now, and you are absolutely correct. It is, in fact, Hugh Jackman.
Right? See? It was. I mean, he's not comic accurate, but you cannot argue that he did not love being Logan.
I think what I appreciate about his performance for the X-Men Origins Wolverine game is that he adjusts his vocal register to be more comic-y, cartoony, which I think is a sign of respect for what he's trying to do for the material.
Absolutely. No
As
argument.
opposed to being a movie. Yeah. But sorry, you were asking me a question. I'm so sorry. You were asking me a question.
No, I was asking, you've seen the gameplay, you've seen the trailers, you've seen the presentation for the upcoming Marvel Avengers game from Crystal Dynamics.
Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix.
Are we in for a good time? Does it look like it's going to be a good time? Because I'm still not a fan of the designs.
I'm not a fan of the art design. I'm not a fan of this kind of okay, so the Marvel Avenger games is looking to shape up some kind of live service style game wherein there's a single player campaign, there's and there's a multiplayer component that allows you to just keep on grinding and keep on playing missions over and over and over again to get better loot. And I'm not a fan of that format. I don't think it's inherently exciting. There are only so many hours in the day I have to play video games, and so many video games I want to play that I don't want to be married to a single video game over the course of several months. And that's I just don't have the heart for that. Now, whether the game is going to be any good, I don't know. It looks kind of sketchy. We're going to find out soon because June 29, they're going to show more of the game again, and in mid-August we're going to get an open beta.
Wait, what do you mean June 29? It's already July.
Yeah, sorry, a closed beta and then an open beta later for the game.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Well,
sorry, did you say June or did I say July? July 29 is when
you said June. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the press conference is. We need a time machine to attend it. But yeah, I would love to play a decent Avengers game. I mean, just the sheer scope of their powers and the way they could play off each other sounds like it would make a perfect game. But I have not seen anything from this one that gives me confidence.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe I want to think that I'm wrong about this because when Insomniac Games Spider-Man was unveiled to the world at one of the Sony conferences, I was actually kind of skeptical.
Oh yeah, same here. That's true.
I was like,
now that you mention
I was skeptical, but not because I thought the game looked bad, but more like it looked like it was good in the ways that it was expected to be good. Do you know what I mean? Like I was looking at it thinking, all right,
like the bare minimum for this character.
Yeah, exactly. And they showed a lot of scenes which had quick time events where you press buttons to save people and all that stuff, and lots of these scripted sequences. And I was like, look, if all you can show me is scripted sequences and not dynamic gameplay, I can't be excited about that. And in the case of Marvel's Avengers, I feel like they're showing us all this like combat and they're showing us all this loot and all that stuff. But what if I'm wrong and actually the whole experience, like from beginning to end, is just something that's great that they can't afford to show us because they're trying to minimize spoilers. They're trying to minimize, the surprise. Oh, sorry, maximize the surprise.
Well, I think that we're gonna have to go into this the same way that I actually go into movies. I go into the theater. I am always hoping for the best because nobody wants to see a sting. Nobody wants to see a flop, honestly. And when it comes to characters that are as beloved as this, or as popular as this now because of the MCU, I think that the publisher has a responsibility to put out something good. We are way past the days when good cover art would be enough to cover up for a game's faults. We are way past that. And we're also way past the early Xbox 360 days where Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man were glorified mobile ports.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so, well, first of all, I want to say that the difference between a movie and a video game, and I say this as someone who loves to defend video games up the wazoo, is that video games are a $60 experience and not a $10 appointment with the cinema. But we'll see. I mean, I'm going to see if I can pull some strings because as our listeners might not know, I write and contribute to a site called toomuchgaming.net. So I'm going to see if I can ask for an in on some of the preview events or the closed betas, and we'll see.
Yeah, I have my fingers crossed because I imagine that there is plenty of fun to be had in a game where you can fling Captain America's mighty shield or, wield Thor's hammer.
I caught that. I know what you said there.
Hey, if you want to burst the song, I'm not going to stop you.
No, let's spare the listeners my singing voice.
May I just say, I take it as a personal failing on my part that I did not play a game where the Hulk could wrap cars around his hands and use them as boxing gloves.
At least watch a Let's Play for some fun tonight.
I don't know how I missed it. So I think that's about all the time we have for today. Let us know in the comments what your favorite Marvel video games were. Let us know in the comments what your favorite Marvel video games are and whether or not you're excited for the upcoming Avengers video game.
Guys, all of you who are listening, I got my own personal question you got to talk to me about, which is, let me know which game you're embarrassed to have played. You know what I mean? Like wear that shame with pride. Tell me, which god-awful Marvel game you played more than it deserved.
I'm trying to remember, but I don't know. Okay. I know what it is. It's not so much that I was ashamed by it, but something that I thought was incredibly overrated, and I know I'm going to get dragged over the coals for this.
Do it.
Maximum Carnage on the SNES.
Oh, yeah, no, that's god-awful.
I only played it. Okay, the marketing for that game was incredible. I remember seeing ads for that in every major comic book in the early 90s. But when not in a
DC comic.
Not in a DC comic. But when I finally picked up that game, I picked it up I think in the late 90s or the early 2000s. I was like, this is it? It had amazing box art.
And I think that is an episode.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week. Fucking A, Maximum Carnage. What the hell? Why did they spend so much money selling that piece of crap? What the hell? I vaguely recall Hulk Ultimate Destruction. I know what the box art looks like. I don't know why I never picked it up. I think because it came out around the time as that anime.
3 Point Landing is recorded at Big Baby Studios. Follow us on Facebook at 3 Point Landing PH.